All right, we'll go ahead and get started. And then, like I said, I'll just do a short introduction, and then I'll turn it over to Mary Kate, who's going to lead this training today. For those of you who have not met me, mentors, um, formally, Ronald Bastian. I'm the program director with Odyssey Atlanta. I am who you've been in direct contact with over email. And I first want to thank all of you for your patience and working with us as we had to keep pushing back the start dates for the mentoring program. Initially, we wanted to have this training back in March and in person. Excuse me, in May in person, but obviously due to the pandemic, we had to push it back, and then we pushed it back to roughly summer, and then we had to push it back again because we were trying to we wanted it to be as informative as possible, so we wanted to take our time with it. With the help of Mary Kay Chapman, who's going to lead this training, we've put together something that we think will be super informative and super helpful and help foster that relationship between our mentors and mentees and make it a healthy and a long-lasting relationship. In the past, for the mentors who have been on board with us in the past, I know some of the feedback has been that the connections have dropped shortly after meeting your mentees, so students not responding, or sometimes on the opposite end, our mentees, our mentors stopped responding, they got busy. So the plan with this is to make sure that doesn't happen this time. We want to make sure our students have a reliable and helpful, informative resource in the mentors that they gain. So again, I want to thank you for your patience, and of course, thank you for showing up today for this webinar. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mary Kate, and we can get started.
All right, sounds good. Thank y'all so much for being here today. I know that it's a Monday afternoon, and that can be daunting, and sometimes we're voluntold to be on things that we don't necessarily sign up for ourselves. So thank y'all so much for being here today and for really wanting to engage in this conversation about making sure that we are connecting and we're creating those relationships with the youth that we serve, and also with other mentors, with other staff members, etc. And just a little bit of information about me, so you know I'm legit and I'm a random person that Ronald paid to do this. Like, I think I'm legit. I actually went through a program when I was 17. It's Georgia Teen Institute. And I remember going through that program and having adults who were present who really saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. And as a result, I continued that work for 20 years. I think we're at the 20-year mark right now. And I actually now run the program that changed my life when I was 17. So it's really amazing the power that we have when we work with youth, when we work with anybody, that we can create relationships with them that maybe they don't have with other people. Maybe they don't have it with their parent or their guardian, but we are those people I like to call champions, because we are championing the way for the folks who are coming into our program, for those connections that we have. And today we're going to talk a lot about the research behind this stuff, but we do only have a little bit less than an hour with each other. So I want this to be specifically for you. So we're going to get into some of the science, some of those things. However, if there's a point where we have a conversation that really speaks to what your work is, what you're doing with your mentees, then that's a conversation we'll have, because I want to make sure that this is totally geared toward what you need from this today. So we're going to start things off, and we're going to do something called a super chat, because I want to get a true picture of where we're at today. You don't fail this webinar if you put in that you're not having a good day. It's all good. But in just a moment, but not yet, what I want you to do is I want you to think about where you are right now. And you're going to type one of these responses into the chat box without hitting send, because we're all going to hit send at the same exact time. So your first option is, meh, I'm doing all right, it's okay. Number 2 is more caffeine. You'll be good if you have a little bit more of that. 3 is that you're feeling pretty good, or 4, you feel like right now in this current moment, you were living your best life. So type in either 1, 2, 3, or 4 into the chat box, and I'll tell you when to hit send. Give you about 5 more seconds. And I promise, well, it wouldn't matter if I did, but I don't have a mustache. It's just where the sun is hitting me on my face right now. So it'll go away in a minute. All right. So yep, go ahead and type those numbers in. All right. We got lots of 3s. We got a couple of 2s, 3s, 2s, right? Sounds about right, because it's a Monday afternoon. And if y'all are anything like me, y'all are probably exhausted because it's been that kind of day. All right. So couple of things, and we still have those responses coming in. Absolutely. Anytime that we engage with each other or we engage with the youth that we serve, it's so important that we get a feel for what they're going through in this current moment. Because often when I first started working with mentees and I first started having conversations and getting to know the youth who were in my programs, it was yeah, how are you doing? But I didn't really listen. And then it affected our relationship in that it's that trust building, right? That relationship building. And really, we know how things can affect our own moods. If y'all are like me and didn't get a lot of sleep last night, and you wake up this morning and have all these things to do, those things are impacted by what's happened previously, by your experiences. So the same thing is happening with our mentees. So it's so important that we get a feel for what their vibe is in that current moment, what they're feeling, how they're coming to your program, how they're coming to that conversation. And you can base the remainder of your conversation in that relationship on that initial, hey, how are you doing today? So just making sure that you are trying to connect in even these little small ways. And another thing, and y'all will have to excuse me because I'm one of those people, I'm going to go off on random tangents because I feel like they're good nuggets of information. So my name is Mary Kate. And I have always been on any role, people would be like, is Mary here? And I'm like, no, Mary's not here because my first name's Mary Kate because my parents hate me and gave me 2 first names. I don't know why they did that, but they did. And I always felt like if there was an adult out there who took the time to know what my name was, to say it correctly, I knew they cared about me because it was a different thing. It wasn't just another name on a sheet of paper. It wasn't just another relationship or another student in their class. So making sure that we use names, we know how to pronounce names, we use them correctly. And often when we talk to people, making sure that, like if I'm having a conversation with Ronald, that in that I'm responding to him and saying his name. It makes people feel important and feel like they're part of that conversation. So just a little nugget that we're gonna take from there. All right, so a couple of things about today. I want this to be an open conversation. I am an in-person facilitator, so it's been very hard to transition into this new world of everything being virtual. I'm very extroverted, and this has been really difficult for me as an adult, so I can't even imagine what it's like for the youth that we serve. So in that, want you to be super participatory if you can, have your camera on. Also, I know that you might have a kid coming in the room asking you how to do a math problem. Sometimes my husband will randomly walk into the room and I'm like, hey, I'm leading a webinar. Can you please leave right now? So totally understandable no matter what happens. But if you could have something to jot notes down on, because we're going to do some thought process type things, and this light mustache is driving me crazy. So I'm just going to close this blind real quick. So hopefully, there we go. Oh, there's another one. It's all good. All right. So we're going to jot some notes down along the way. If you don't have paper or pen, if you'll just type it up on your phone, just something where you can have that and be able to speak to it. And if you're interested in following us on social media, there might be a photo of all of us together collectively on this webinar in just a little bit up on our social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, all the things. And if you are interested in getting more information about us as an organization, or if you never want to see me again, but you want some team building activities, you want some more information and resources related to all of the things that we talk about today, you can check out our website. It's guideinc.org, and that's at the bottom of the slide there, and then it'll be at the end of our PowerPoint as well. All right, friends. So we're going to spend a little bit of time here in the beginning doing a little bit of a connection activity, because we know that connection is so key, not only for us, but specifically for the youth that we're working with. That's what these mentor-mentee relationships are all about. So what I would like for you to do is to take a look at the cards that are on the screen right now. And these are cards that we created to do some debriefing activities and grouping activities, that kind of thing. And I want for you to look at those and find one that speaks to what you're experiencing right now. So in this very moment, what is something that you are thinking about? For instance, I actually went to school to be a baseball sports caster person, and I'm so Southern. They said, no, honey, you can't be doing any kind of news broadcast because you're the most Southern person I've ever heard in my life. I even took classes, and this is what I sound like. So it is what it is. But the Braves play tomorrow in the division series, first game, and I'm so excited because it's also my 37th birthday, so it's going to be like the best Tuesday ever. I'm very excited. So the baseball field is something that's really resonating with me right now in this current moment. All right, so take a moment, take about 10 seconds or so to determine what card really speaks to what you're experiencing right now in this moment. And once you know what that card is and you can speak to it in your head, don't forget it because you're going to have to talk to each other about it in just a minute. All right, so take just a couple more seconds to pick out that card. All right, friends. So now here is your next assignment. In just a moment, but not yet, I'm going to put you into a small group. And I know probably y'all have been on Zoom for like 6 months at this point, but I'm still going to give you directions in case there's someone who has not been on Zoom yet. But in just a moment, you're going to see something that pops up on the screen that says join or later. Make sure you hit the join button, and that will put you into a small group. And with your small group, I ask that you, if you haven't already, go ahead and turn on your camera so people can see your face and make sure that you're not muted so you can actually have some conversation. And you're going to have about 5 minutes with your group to discuss which card you chose and the reason that you chose that card. So you're just going to have a little bit of a group discussion, and then we're going to come back after 5 minutes and talk about it as a large group. So give me just 1 second, and I'm going to put y'all into breakout rooms. Let's see. Yep, that works for me. All right, friends, I'm going to put you in that room. Remember to hit the join button, and then when we come back together, we'll talk about what we discussed. So go ahead and hit join when you can. It looks like everybody is coming back in. Thank you for having that conversation. So I would like for a couple of you to share something that you learned about somebody that was in your group, something that you feel like is appropriate to share with the rest of us, and that, you know, nobody's going to get like fired or can't be part of the mentee program anymore because of this, right? So does anybody want to come off mute and share something that you learned about somebody in your group? Any takers?
I'll go.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, I'm Aisha, and Ronald and I actually were grouped together, and we chose the same image, which was crazy. But you know, we both had two different things. We chose the rolling heels, and I used it to talk about the junior advisements that I'm getting ready to do, because some parents are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and then I got those who aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then he looked at it from the aspect of, you know, like a vacation or just being outdoors and being able to explore. So, and he actually told me about, you know, a place that he's visited that I'm gonna do some research on and try to take my little ones to. So
that's amazing. I love that too, that it's the same image, but two different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that true for everything in life, right? That everything we're going through, the current administration, what's happening with that, what's happening with social injustice stuff everywhere, everybody has a perception, right? And so it's so interesting. And especially if we're giving our youth the opportunity to talk about their perspective on current issues, it can stem from a photo that you put up, you know, tell me what you think about this. So absolutely, that's awesome. All right, one other person who wants to share something interesting that they learned. Any takers? Not to worry, if you don't participate now, you will have opportunities to participate later. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. All right. Well, if you say, hey, just kidding, I do actually want to share, just tell me to shut my mouth, then I'll give you the opportunity to do that. All right. So we at Guide, in any time that we work in concepts of positive youth development, and we work in prevention too, and not prevention like my dad tells people that I hand out pamphlets on why drugs are bad, and I'm like, that's actually not at all what I do. But I work with kids to get them actively engaged in their community, because I know that when I was super engaged in the community, I was less likely to engage in drug and alcohol use. And it's the same things for the kids that we're working with today. So we do everything with purpose. So we don't just play games. We don't just do team building. There's purpose behind everything that we do. So does somebody want to share with us? You can either throw this in the chat box or you can take yourself off of mute. But why is it that we would start this time together, or any time that we're with our mentee, why would we start off with an activity that's like this? Why would we do something like that?
I think we just need to kind of know where people are in their lives right now, what kind of mindset you have.
Just let them talk, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about, and it's hard for me because the trainer that I was before March 16th is very different than the trainer I am today. And just a couple of points of, so y'all know where I'm coming from. So I live in South Atlanta, and I live right next to the Wendy's that was where Rashard Brooks was killed. And so I see things very differently than people who live where my office is located in Gwinnett, because they didn't experience the same things that I experienced here, that I saw, or that I felt because it was here in my neighborhood, right? And if we think about our kids, they don't have the opportunity to have those conversations because they are on Zoom 24/7 doing their schoolwork. Then they have to get off and do homework. Then it's just all this stuff where someone is talking at them 24/7, much more than before all of this stuff happened, right? So they're struggling with a global pandemic, and I'm struggling with it too. And I'm almost 37. I've never had to live through this before. So that's happening. Social injustices, everything that's happening with the current administration, with the upcoming election, with the debate that happened a couple of nights ago. Can you imagine if you don't have an outlet to share what you're experiencing? It can be really, really hard. And it can be hard even if you do have that outlet to talk to folks about it. So making sure that we're able to have those conversations, and that the people who are coming to us trust us. Because how many times, I don't know about y'all, but when I was a kid and I trusted an adult with something and they went, oh, that's bad. You should not be talking like that. You should not have that opinion. And I remember being like, okay, well, I'm never going to talk to them again because I can't trust them to help lead me in the right direction, right? So making sure that we're being that trusting person that somebody can go to. It's an opportunity for people to bond, like Jonathan said. Let's have this conversation. I'm here to listen to you 100%. And also the idea of self-reflection, because often we don't even know what we're going through. I know what Instagram tells me I should feel. I know what the news tells me I should feel, and it depends on what news I'm watching. Am I watching CNN or am I watching Fox? Because they're going to tell me a different story, right? So you have to figure out, what do I feel? So that self-reflection of what am I going through? How do I work through this, right? Yep, and Alyssa says, right, if I can't trust you, I'm not going to associate myself with you. And that's not what we want for the people who we're trying to mentor. We want them to have those trusting relationships with us. And so it's really important that we give them that opportunity, right? So that's 100% it. Let us have this conversation. It can be about a random card on the screen or this picture that I show you, but it allows people in a creative way to share what their experience is or what they're going through. All right, so, and we've said this already, and I'm gonna try to keep my passion down because we only have a very limited of time together today, but 100%, it's all about relationships. And I can tell you more bad relationships that I've had when I was younger than I can the good ones, because guess what? Unfortunately, the bad is what I remember. There were a handful of folks who really supported me, but there were some that kind of ruined things for me. And one story I always share is, and I'm still hurt that this happened. It did not happen to me, but I could have said something and I did not. I was an adult and I was working for a spiritual retreat kind of weekend thing that I'm not involved with anymore. But one of the characteristics of this program was that people would show up and you would feed them and love on them and all the things, right? Well, somebody showed up, and some of the staff members who were much younger than me, they were teenagers, were making fun of one of the people who got off of the bus to be at this event. And I remember thinking, that right there is going to keep that young lady from ever wanting to come back here again. The power that we have to make people want to come back to our program or to keep them away, we have that power. So how are we going to use it? Are we going to use it for the right reasons? Are we going to use it for the wrong reasons? And what good does it do us to turn people away from our programs, right? To build a barrier in those relationships. What we want to do is make those relationships stronger. So it's all about how do we do this? What are some of the techniques, the tools that we can use in order to do that? Now, like I keep saying, we don't have that much time with each other. So we're going to go into some of the details about these are the things that you can do. But I really want it to resonate with you, why it's so important and the power that you have, because when you realize that, your the way that you communicate with people, the way that you have those relationships, it changes because you understand your role in that relationship. Okay. All right. So what I would like for you to do is, in just a moment, but not yet, we're going to do something called a WIBIT, and it stands for Write It Before You Talk. And this is one of my favorite concepts. It came about from a gentleman by the name of Michael Brandwine. He's a guru for me. I love that guy, but not like inappropriately. So for the longest time, my husband thought there was a thing. I was like, sweetheart, he is like old enough to be my grandfather. I am not trying to be with this man. I just think he is brilliant. But Write It Before You Talk, it's all about putting your thoughts on paper before you share it out with a large group. So it is going to make your participation go up. You can use this with staff. You can use this with other mentors. You can use this with your mentees, but it allows them to think about their own answer before sharing it out with a large group. So what I would like for you to do is you're going to take about 90 seconds to think back to a time when you were a teenager. For some of us, maybe that was a couple of years ago. For some of us, maybe it was 20 years, okay? It's all good, whatever it is, think back to when you were a teenager. And think about some relationships that really stand out to you. So think about the relationships that you had. For instance, I was really close to my high school counselor. I was very close to my sister who's close to me in age. So what are some of those relationships that you had? Why did they stand out? What were some of the characteristics that made those relationships different? Okay, so I'm gonna give you about 90 seconds to jot down your thoughts. You're gonna be sharing these thoughts out with each other in just a little bit. So think about them. Set my timer for 90 seconds. Right, you've got about 45 seconds left. It'll take about 20 more seconds to put those thoughts down on paper. All right, and as you finish up that last word or phrase, I was going to put you back into small groups, but I think that this can be a conversation that we have as a large group because we don't have that many folks on. So I think that this will be good for us to kind of talk about this. So a couple of things. If you don't want to say it out loud, that's totally fine because sometimes this can be emotional because either it's a good experience or it's a bad experience. So whatever you want to do, so you can throw it in the chat box. Or if you feel comfortable, feel free to take yourself off of mute and tell us a little bit about what you processed during this time.
I could go.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. My name is Holly Easton. And I'm sorry I missed the beginning. I explained to Ronald I was picking up some children real quick and getting them home, but I'm excited to be here today. And I love this question that you've asked of us. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. And it's like I haven't thought about in the longest time, like who were the relationships I had as a teen and why were they important to me? So I love this question. I appreciate it. I did a lot of running throughout growing up, so like cross country and track and field. And the high school I went to, we were very blessed with a group of incredible coaches. So I immediately thought of this one cross country coach I had, Mr. Crawford, who was just, I mean, such a fair, so inspiring, empowering, kind. He took as much time, like there was no difference between the girls and the boys team. We were one team. We were all one team doing the exact same workouts, cheering each other on, pushing each other together. And he just took a lot of, I don't know, it was just naturally within his like DNA to be that type of a leader. But he was, he's someone that like I've noticed even on Facebook, because I keep in touch with all these nice people I grew up with, we still talk about him. You know, he just was such a special person. I know he's now up in heaven. He passed away years ago of cancer, but he just was one of those really special leaders, you know, 14 years through 18 years. That's my whole high school experience with him. Yeah.
And see, I love that, because in what you said is so true, that often we don't think about the people who changed our lives when we were young, right? I'm so fortunate because the number one person who saw in me what I didn't see in myself at 17 was the Teen Institute director when I went through, and she happens to be my boss now. It's rare that you get that experience. Now, and she would say the same exact thing. She says we're like sandpaper, because as much as I love her, sometimes we take some of that paint off, right? Because we're angry with each other. But I love her more than anybody because she just knew my worth before I did. But a lot of people never see those people again that really changed their life. And maybe it was just a moment. Maybe it wasn't even a teacher. Maybe it was just someone who said something to you on a day that you needed to hear it, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing that. That was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Anybody else want to share?
I can jump in real quick. I won't be long. But I think back on the opposite end of that spectrum, I think about the relationships that I didn't take advantage of. I had my PE teacher in ninth grade. I had just moved from New York here to Georgia. Ms. Bryson, she was one of the first classes I took in high school. It was PE. Did great. She loved me and I loved her. She was great. But then I got on the basketball team as I got older, got more arrogant, more hard-headed. So by the time I got to 12th grade and I actually took her again, as you know, just take an elective because you're towards the end of your high school career. So I took PE again. And like I said, just arrogant, being on the basketball team and stuff. And she got really upset with me and I got kicked out of the class because she said I wasn't showing the maturity and leadership that I should be showing with as a 12th grader, being that class was filled with mostly ninth graders. And I told her, I was like, why do I have to be a leader? Like, who selected me as a role model? I don't even know these kids. And so what she was instilling in me was, you know, something that we could all, you know, take and you eventually use in your life. But at the time, I just really didn't see the value in it. And I was just taking that class just because I needed an extra class. So I think about relationships like that that I didn't take advantage of and didn't learn enough from. But I learned from it afterwards. And when I got my first real job at the Boys and Girls Club, Daryl Mason, who was my program director, when I think of him, I think of like the folk tales. He's like that old wise owl you would have in the story. And I did take advantage of what he provided to me. He taught me a lot. He actually groomed me for his position before he retired. And I left the organization before I could take his place. But I value everything that he taught me. And I actually, like I said, learned from Miss Bryson and took that into what I learned and learned how to take advantage of relationships with Mr. Mason.
And it's so, you do this work now, you're like, I'm not a leader, you know, and here you are doing this work. It's amazing what people see in us before we see it, right? And it's our job to see that. And because, you know, there's always that one, maybe it's the current person that you're working with, maybe it's your own child, maybe it's your spouse, I don't know. But there's always that one person that you're like, I swear to God today, John, I am not dealing with you today. Like I can't. But when we go, you know what? I am the person, I'm the champion for John. I gotta, because maybe John doesn't have any other champions because he gets on everybody's nerves, right? So you gotta be like, I'm gonna call some good things out. I'm gonna speak some positivity over him because he needs it, right? That is our job. And as hard as it is, that is what we're called to do in this role, is to speak things over the people that we work with. And my husband would also say, oh, this is when you get into that weird hippie stuff that's not real. It is real. There is science. I do a whole bunch of webinars and workshops on positive psychology and what happens when we speak things over people. And you can think about it from a religious perspective, but it's not just that. It is a perspective of, there's something called the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. And it's this idea that if I buy a car, I start to see that car on the road. It's not because more people are buying that vehicle, it's because it's what I've put into my brain. So if you're listening to music that's negative, if you're watching movies that are not good for your soul, then that can influence you in certain ways. It's the same thing when we call someone something or we speak something over them. That's what they begin to hear. One story that I share often, and I apologize, y'all, I've got so many personal stories, but this one really resonates with me. I used to work in Title I schools, and I would go in and work with teachers on nutrition and physical activity in the classroom, that kind of thing. And we took this exhibit, it was called the Body Walk, and we took it to this one school, we set everything up, and this young boy, he was probably in 4th grade, something like that. He was running around, and he was tripping people and just, you know, doing all the things. And his teacher said to him, boy, stop acting like a fool. And what did he do but continue to act in the same way, right? Because that's what people thought of him. That's what was expected of him, was for him to act that way. By accident, he held the door open for me. And I said, sir, thank you so much for your manners. I greatly appreciate it. You better believe he stood up straight. He was like, all right, I have manners now. All right. And everybody's like, what did you say to him? I was like, I didn't even mean to say anything. But when we speak things positive over people, even ourselves, it's incredible what can change, right? A couple of things have come through the chat box that I want to make sure that I talk about. One thing is, a lot of things come up about toxic relationships. And I think that's important for us to address that with our mentees, but also in our own lives, because, you know, we all have those relationships that we probably could get rid of. And it's okay if you get rid of them. Sometimes it's going to be family members, and we're going through that right now, and it's hard, but it does not bring about any positivity for anyone. So you do what you have to do to make sure that you're living your best life, right? And so making sure that we're choosing the relationships that we're in, we're choosing the things that bring us joy within reason, because sometimes writing reports does not bring me joy, but I have to do it for my job. So, you know, we have to do something. Taking out the trash is not fun, but I don't need my house disgusting with trash everywhere. So just making sure that we are holding on to those relationships that aren't toxic, and that we're making sure that our relationships with our mentees are not toxic, and that we're figuring out what that means and what they need from us specifically, right? And then Lisa said that her teacher, she was consistent in her dealing with every student. She'd allowed me to develop a voice in the group. And that is so key. We do an entire workshop on youth voice and why it's so important. And I remember when I was 17 and I went to this camp, and they were asking me, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think are the current problems that youth are experiencing in your high school? And I was like, wait, y'all care what I have to say? Okay, that's interesting. And it completely changed my life. I would not be doing this job today had I not been given the opportunity to speak my mind when I was 17. So what Ronald was saying, someone said, be a leader. You are a leader. You need to be a leader. And he goes, okay. And then look at what he does now. These little things that seem little at the time can really be instrumental in what happens for our youth later on in their life. All right, so per usual, I'm talking too much, and we're gonna move on to the next bit, because I want to make sure that I actually give y'all a little bit of the science and not just the warm fuzzy stuff that goes along with it. All right, so just a couple of notes that are important for us to remember. So today, as many as 40% of young people feel lonely. Now, please keep in mind that this statistic came about before quarantine, before COVID, before all the things that are currently happening. And so I'm assuming that this number is much higher now. The problem with a lot of things related to youth and what they're experiencing versus what we went through when we were growing up is this lack of connection. When you look at science and research related to depression levels for our youth are much higher than they ever were for us, because we actually had opportunities to engage with each other. If I wanted to hang out with my friend, the only way I could do that was to hang out with her. I had AOL Instant Messenger, so we could chat a little bit there, but we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have any of those things. I think MySpace came around maybe when I was in college, but we actually had to connect with each other. And one of the key characteristics of someone not being depressed is to make sure that they have actual human connection. And youth today feel like that can, I sound like it's been 84 years, youth today, but youth today, they feel that they're connecting by direct messaging someone, or by sending a text message, or by putting a post on somebody's Instagram account, whatever the case is, right? So they already, before all of this happened, already felt disconnected because they were. So now they literally, for the most part, can't go outside. Some people have gone back to school, some people haven't, just depends on where they go to school, what their family wants them to do, etc. So we're dealing with a group of people now who literally have never been through this in their entire lives. We've never been through this in our entire lives, and we can't have that human connection. I had my first in-person presentation last week, and I wanted so badly, it was random people. I was like, I want to hug this person because I haven't seen anybody but my husband in 6 months. I just want to hug somebody. But we can't do that because of what's going on in the world. Also, that would probably be weird if I randomly hug someone that I didn't know. So just think about, if we're feeling that, think about the pressure that our youth are experiencing because of all the things that are happening around them. And if at any point I'm going too fast or you just need me to slow it down, just let me know and I'll do that. But one body of research that we work a lot with is the 40 developmental assets. And there's a lot of research and resources that are available if you go to searchinstitute.org. And I'll actually type that into the chat box just so that you all have that. I'll make sure I send that to everybody. But they have a lot of free resources. Institute. I have an English degree, but you wouldn't know. Search Institute. I think that's correct. But they have a lot of resources that are free, some that you have to pay for, but it talks about what's important for different age groups in terms of these 40 developmental assets. And it's the idea that the more assets a youth has, the more likely they are to be successful. And it's also the concept of risk and protective factors, the idea that the more protective factors you have, the less risk factors you have. They outweigh each other. So when we look at 40 developmental assets, it's important to know that not everybody is going to have all 40. I don't think there's anybody out there that has all 40 because there's a lot of things that go into it. So our job as champions for the youth that we serve, as youth serving professionals, as mentors, all of those things, is to help provide as many of these developmental assets as we can. Often we do it without even knowing that it's an asset. So we're going to talk really big picture because of time. We're going to talk really big picture just so that you have an idea of what this is if you don't already know about this concept. And I'll make sure that I send some resources directly to Ronald so he can send them out to all of you so that you've got the handouts and the information that coincide with this. All right, so when we look at 40 developmental assets, we've got ones that are external. So those different categories are support, empowerment, boundaries and expectation, and constructive use of time. So I'm going to give you an example for boundaries and expectations because this is my favorite external. It's weird that I have a favorite external asset that I like to talk about, but boundaries and expectations are so important because I work with a lot of younger people who work directly with youth and they want to be best friends and they want to, yes, you can be part of our youth advisory board and no, you don't ever have to show up to meetings and there will be no ramifications for you not doing what you've said you'll do. They don't realize that they're not setting youth up for success when they do that. So we have to train them on how you work with youth by setting boundaries and expectations. Whatever boundary you have, whatever expectation you have, your youth, anybody in your life, they will meet that expectation. You have to give them, if it's set up high, you can give them the tools and the resources to meet that expectation up high. But if you set it low, that's what they're going to meet too. And I actually grew, I'm not always super proud to say this, but it's who I am. So my father was a police officer for 50 years, and he was a chief of police for 25 years. And that was fun growing up in that house, let me tell you. But he did tell me when I turned 16, I had one rule, and that rule was you are not allowed to drive on Barrett Parkway. Barrett Parkway is where the mall is located. It is where there's a lot of traffic. You are not allowed to drive on Barrett Parkway. The day that I got my driver's license, I drove on Barrett Parkway. And that day that I was on Barrett Parkway, I got into a car accident. The first day that I had my driver's license, wasn't supposed to be on Barrett Parkway, got into a car accident. It just so happened to be in my father's jurisdiction. And he was the police officer who showed up for that car accident. And he just looked at me and he said, I don't know why you're here, but we'll discuss this when we get home. And I was like, okay, it's gonna be the worst day of my life. And it was really bad, it was terrible. But the worst part was, I love this part, is that the woman that I got in the accident with was actually flirting with him to try and get out of the ticket. And that was enough for me. I was like, I can't, this woman's flirting with my dad, I can't deal with it, it's disgusting. But anyways, so there were boundaries and expectations that were set up for me. And he didn't just go, oh, it's okay, she was on Barrett Parkway, it's not that big of a deal, she's probably scared that she was in a car accident. No. I didn't drive for a very long time after that because I broke a rule. And guess what? I didn't go on Barrett Parkway again until I was allowed to. So boundaries and expectations are good. If you've got mentees that are coming to you, or maybe they're not showing up, gotta have a conversation. Be like, what's up? What's going on? How can we make this work? How can we have this conversation? What can I do to get you here? Because that's part of this whole deal, is that we have conversations, that we're engaging with each other, that we're building this relationship. So making sure that you're setting up those boundaries and expectations for them. All right, so then we talk about internal assets. Those are commitment to learning, positive values, social competencies, and positive identity. And often, no matter what group of youth you work with, they don't necessarily, I honestly can't even think of anybody that I work with that they really know who they are and they're strong in who they are when they're 15. I was a basket case when I was 16 or 15, all of the years that I was in high school, right? I didn't really know who I was, and the adults in my life who did already see who I was and could speak to that, they helped lead me through that. Like, it's okay that you got made fun of for X, Y, or Z. Think about these options. You know, they talk you through things. So that's our job in this, is to show them who they really are and to help them understand it themselves. One of my favorite resources in the world, and y'all don't actually have homework, but if you're interested, this is a video that I would definitely encourage you to check out. It is on, if you YouTube search Peter Benson TED Talk, and it will come up for you. This gentleman worked for the Search Institute for a long time, and he did a lot of research related to sparks. And it's this concept of when youth are given the opportunity to engage in the things that they love, they're going to be better in all other aspects of their life. It's the same thing for us. When I'm truly engaging in things that help my soul, that take care of me, that I'm putting into myself, then I'm able to put into other people, right? And this quote on the screen, actually, Peter Benson says it in his TED Talk, but Plutarch, who is a philosopher, is actually the one who said it first. And he says, youth are not vessels to be filled, but fires to be lit. And we often think, oh, we've got to pour into somebody. We got to put all this stuff into them. We got to give them all this information. At the end of the day, youth, they've already got stuff going on. They already have that, whatever they are inside of them. And it's our job to see that potential, to see where they can grow, and to go, okay, how can I help this manifest? What can I give them? What resources and tools can I provide that help them get on their way? And when you talk with youth and you allow them to talk to you about what they love, you are the coolest person in the entire world. My sweet, sweet niece, she loves to write, and nobody will listen to her about it because she talks about it like a real lot, like hours on end. She'll talk about her writing this book and all this stuff, but I can see it in her eyes when she sees me. She's like, Aunt Mary Kate's here. She will let me talk to her about my book. And she's so excited because she's so passionate about it. Letting kids just talk about, tell me about you. Tell me what you're going through. Tell me what your experience is. What do you love to do? What is your spark? What brings you life? What brings you joy? And some of those very specific ways that you can do that is in that TED Talk. It's about 20 minutes, but it's really awesome. So once again, feel free to check that out. It's Peter Benson TED Talk. You can YouTube search that. A couple of quick things as we are close to closing out. It's important for us with developmental relationships because they help our young people thrive. and really, we are kind of in this place right now in our world, in this country, where we are surviving, right? A lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people are, I saw a meme the other day that said, have you ever been through a global pandemic trying to do 6 classes in an 8-hour day, then have 3 hours of homework after, and your teacher doesn't know how to use Zoom? Yeah, me either. Let's give our kids a break, right? Let's just give them a break. They're going through a lot that we've never experienced before. So let's just try to be there for them and let them talk it out with us. When we have those strong relationships with them, when we're champions and we hear what they're saying and we actively listen to understand, not just to go, well, let me tell you why that's dumb. Let me tell you why you shouldn't make that choice, right? When we're actively listening to them, that's when they discover who they are. It helps them develop abilities to shape their own lives. So just like what we talked about, these conversations we had with teachers 20 years ago, how maybe it helped sculpt us into the people we are today. And it also helps them learn how to engage and contribute to the world around them. So maybe the conversations that you're having with your mentees are conversations that they then have with a younger sibling or with a friend or somebody, because they're like, this really worked for me. Maybe I can pass this on. Maybe in 20 years from now, they're saying with a group of people, I remember when I went through this after school program and I worked with Felicia and she was amazing and she changed my life and she actually listened to what I had to say. So all of these things really help build up our folks. So with that said, very quickly, because we are coming up toward the end of our hour, I know that we talked a lot about the warm fuzzy stuff, so my husband would not have liked this training very much, but the stuff about what can we do, right? What can we do today that will hopefully help create this atmosphere of understanding and of building a relationship, right? So if you would do me a huge favor, and in the chat box, I would like for you to type one thing that either learned today in this very quick time that we've had together, one thing that maybe you didn't learn anything, but maybe you were like, oh, okay, that's right, I didn't thank this person. Maybe I need to go back and thank people. Maybe I need to do some things that my coach did with me, with the kids that I work with, right? So if you'll type that thing into the chat box for me, we're gonna go over just a couple of those. Make sure I spelled Search Institute. Yep, I think that is correct. All right, so what is one thing that hopefully you're taking from our time together today that hopefully you'll be able to use in the future? Know that you will get the PowerPoint as well. There's a lot of information there. Reminder on boundaries and expectations, absolutely. Spending more time understanding how they feel, because y'all, I am not 17. I don't know what's going through their mind. I was 17 a minute ago and I can't remember what happened yesterday. So I need to listen to them to understand, right? Yep, someone will actually listen to them. Absolutely. Think back to people who supported and encouraged you. And it can be, is it the people who encouraged you, or is it that teacher that was just terrible and you're not going to be like that teacher? Because it can be either way, right? Providing mentee with an activity that could break the ice, 100%. Fire versus filling the tank, absolutely. That you can just say, hey, you're awesome being who you are. I see you. And that's the thing, guys. When we see youth, when we see them for who they are, they're going to be like, okay, they listen to me. They know my name. They actually want to hear what I have to say. It is going to change their life. 100% it's going to change their life. Alyssa, you say, how do we get more information on how to joining?
She's probably referring to how she gets a mentor. I can give her more information after the session by email.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And then Regina says active listening, 100%. And I challenge you today to do some active listening with your spouse or with someone who maybe you've been with for the past 3,000 days, or at least it feels like that many, right? But when you can actively listen with someone who you live with and all the things, then it's a lot easier when it's with your mentee or with somebody that you're working with, right? All right, awesome. I'm going to turn it back over to Ronald. Thank y'all for having me today. Y'all were awesome. And I really wish we had more time together, but yay for an hour. Y'all are fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys for showing up. I will follow up with everyone by email. Mary Kate's still here. I thought you had logged off, but thank you, Mary Kate, for for the presentation. But yeah, I will follow up with all you guys via email. The process as right now, the timetable is by the 23rd. I should have you matched with your mentee. For those that join, such as Alyssa, who are needing more information, I will send out a follow-up email with you, giving you more information on um, how we can get you a mentee. But for our mentors, again, I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day. And again, like I said at the beginning, I appreciate the patience and as we work through this and had to keep pushing back the date because without you guys, we wouldn't have any mentors for our students. So just be on the lookout for emails from me. And I'll have, as Mary Kate told us, I'll have some boundaries and some expectations that we want from our mentors and our mentees. I mean, you can take that into your personal relationships with your mentees and set your own boundaries and expectations. And we will go from there and we will make sure that this program is gets the care it deserves this time around and make sure those relationships last longer than just the typical 6-week summer that we normally have. So